I don't think the game's over.
Not done. We don't want to give up.
I don't think the game's over until...
Not done until the clock says 0. We don't want to give up to the clock says 0.
I don't think the game's over until triple zeros on the clock, triple zeros on the clock, triple zeros on the clock.
What is up? Welcome into Triple Zeros. It's your host, Josh Buckhalter here. Got a lot to talk about and not a lot of time to talk about it in, so we are going to dive right in. Of course, right about now, you know what time it is. Week 7 of the NFL, so that means we're going to kick off everything talking about the Week 7 NFL storylines. There's a lot to get to. A lot of stuff happened just today even, but we'll get to that in a second. First up, talk about Marcus Mariota and Jameis Winston, the first and second pick. Jameis was actually the first pick. Mariota was the second pick. Marcus Mariota just got benched by his coach. Mike Vrabel team announced that they would be starting Ryan Tannehill this week in their game. It's quite a far fall for these two quarterbacks. Both of them were thought to have been franchise guys coming out of college. Neither one has quite lived up. They went 1-2 overall in 2015. Winston for his career, 23-37, 23 wins, 37 losses, 61% completion percentage, just over. He's got 60% this season, 12 touchdowns, 10 picks. He had 5 picks, career high in his last game. Coach Bruce Arians said that he's not thinking about benching him like Vrabel has done with Mariota. But if he has another bad performance, it'll be something that they consider going forward. Mariota is 29-32 in his career. Career 62%, just under 63, 62.9. This year it's at 59.1. That's the lowest. 7 touchdowns, 2 picks. They're just not scoring any points. Both of their QBR, Jameis is at 34. Total QBR, Jameis is at 34.8. Mariota's at 30.8. Neither one of them are really that effective. Jameis has been more so, but the risks come with him. He's got the turnovers. Mariota's just a guy who kind of is just a guy. So it's just, like I said, a far fall. First and second overall pick in 2015. It's only 4 years ago. It's just crazy to see how quickly that happened. Like I said, also, Mariota got pulled for Ryan Tannehill. The career lows, completion percentage, and total QBR. He's been sacked 25 times this season. His most is 38 as his rookie. He had 42 in 2018 and 27 in 2017. But he has his highest air yards per attempt since 2016. So 6 of his 7 touchdowns, though, came in week 1 and week 4. Both of those were 3 apiece, and they both end up in W's. It's all or nothing, but it's a lot of nothing with Mariota. And, of course, then you have the health issue. He's always banged up. Well, they went to Tannehill, which I'm not sure that's necessarily an upgrade, but it's kind of a significant move in that. Like, it's a signaling of moving on from an era, basically. That was supposed to be the rebirth of the Titans, and just doesn't look like it's panned out that way. He could be on the move. Jameis, again, Bruce Arians said he's not taking him down, taking him out of the game. He's got his highest touchdown percentage at 5.5 and yards per completion, but he had that career high 5 picks last week. He's been sacked 25 times in 6 games. He had 35 in 2016 in a full season. So just to let you know how bad things are, it could be their offensive line's not great, their run game's not great. So it's a lot on him, but he's not helping. Complete career high interception percentage this year, 4.5. He had 3.7 in 2018 and 3.2 in his last full 16-game season. He dealt with injuries and was started behind Ryan Fitzpatrick last season. It's just quite a fall for 2 guys who had so many scouts excited for their potential in this league to see that Jameis had off-field issues. Mariota can't stay healthy. So it's never panned out close to what it's been, what it was predicted to be going in. It's just, it's rough, man. That's rough. Like I said, Mariota got benched. Jameis not yet. We'll see another week like that. And the Bucs this week are taking on. The Bucs are on a bye. Bucs are on a bye week this week. Excuse me. So they won't be taking on anybody. they'll be at home enjoying some rest. The Chargers take on Chargers will come to visit the Titans this week in a game that the Chargers need because they're having a really rough season. We'll get to that in a moment. But right now. The Atlanta Falcons and the Chargers are both having, like I said, just awful seasons. I don't know exactly what's going on. I know that both of their defenses are extremely banged up, and the offensive lines. So that's a major issue. The Chargers just got back Melvin Gordon. Didn't result in a victory. They got destroyed, but they're sitting at 2-4 right now, bottom of their division. And then you got Atlanta sitting at 1-5, bottom of their division. I'm not sure that I've seen a fall quite like Atlanta's had since losing the Super Bowl a few years back. They are where's my stat here? They are 18-20 since the Super Bowl loss. And they had a winning season that year after immediately. They've just been trending downward ever since. And it's weird because they're both top 5 passing offenses, but bottom 20 defenses. Atlanta's at 28th and the Chargers at 25th. Atlanta's 31st in scoring offense. The Chargers are struggling to get fans, which is just an aside, but it's still interesting because it's not even a big venue and they struggle to fill it. They had the Steelers out there and it was terrible towels everywhere. Phillip Rivers' time in powder blue could be coming to an end. Could be. Who knows? Probably gets the chance to ride off on his own terms. But then you have to wonder about Matt Ryan. He's nowhere near done at all in this league. But you wonder when they start to consider maybe moving on or doing something different at the quarterback position. They're nowhere near prepared to do so now. But they're going to have a top 5 pick in this year's draft, it looks like. Unless something drastic turns around and they just go on a run for the ages in the second half of the season. I just don't see it, but that's one to keep an eye on. There's just two really good, what we thought would be better teams not performing anywhere close to their expectations. Speaking of not playing close to their expectations, the Cleveland Browns, a team that many were pegging for the letdown of the century because they were one of the most hyped teams in recent memory. They were picked to be a lock for the playoffs and have that major leap. Baker Mayfield is a crowd favorite, not necessarily a media favorite. Who knows about the players, how they feel about them. But everybody thought that they were prepared. This was their no excuse season. They had the coach that they wanted. They got their quarterback. They got a good running back. They just got Odell Beckham Jr. But Baker Mayfield throws a lot of interceptions, and their offensive line is terrible. And when the defense is on the field a lot, as good as it may be, when you're on the field all the time, that defense is going to get tired. And that's what we see with them. The Browns are 2-4 at second in the division. So they're lucky they're still within striking distance of the Baltimore Ravens, but they're losing ground fast. They just had that loss to them recently last week. So this is reality. This is what happens when you have a lot of that hype. I'm not saying that the Browns bought into it, but this is the hype of the preseason meeting the reality of the regular season, where a lot of times you don't know. It can look great on paper, but until you see it on the field, you can't say for sure who's going to be where and who's going to do what in the season. And Browns are case in point, example number one. And it stinks for the Browns fans right now. But again, it's early and they have plenty of time to correct it. But they definitely have to get it going. Baker has to be much smarter with the football and not force as many of these passes. Again, that offensive line is terrible. So, you develop bad habits when that happens as a quarterback. I've seen it many times, but that's going to be the thing that can help, that he can do immediately to immediately improve this team's outlook going forward. Now, beyond the Browns, you got the Redskins and the Jets. Both got W's. The Redskins barely beat the Miami Dolphins, who brought in Ryan after Josh Rosen was getting obliterated, and he almost had the comeback, which is not surprising. It's Ryan Fitzpatrick. That's, Fitzmagic is going to strike at some point. The Redskins got the W, though. They're still fighting, putting in Dwayne Haskins. There's all the talk about the team wasn't fully on board with the drafting of Haskins in the second, third, and I just think that's terrible because the kid's gonna have, like, you're trying to destroy his confidence. That's clearly what's happening here, because this shouldn't be getting out. If that's how you feel, that can be how you feel. But guess what? He's there, so you should probably do the best to try to save your own job and do well with the kid that's the future of the franchise, that's been designated to be the steward of this franchise going forward. Stop trying to make excuses for how, he's not good now and it's his fault because we never wanted him anyway. Well, if you never wanted him anyway, then you are probably just the wrong person for the job, because somebody wanted him there and he's there. So Guess what that means? Guess who's going to go first, especially on a team or with a coaching staff that hasn't accomplished much of anything in their time there. So that's for one. The Jets for two got Sam Darnold back and looked like a completely different unit than the one that we have seen in quite some time. They have 3 offensive touchdowns. Okay, one of them came in week 1. 2 of them came just this past week against the Dallas Cowboys, who took the L right on the chin. But focusing on the Jets still real quick, Sam Darnold comes back and they just look like a competent football team. They attacked the Cowboys early. They kind of sputtered a little bit, but for Darnold's first game back, this team is on the right track. Adam Gase, for all the flack that he's caught, might have something. He might have even just lucked into it, but they have a group of guys that are wanting to succeed together, and they want to play for Sam, and they want the defense is stout, especially those 2 tackles, Williams. Or that's just a solid all-around team in the making. Darnold still has to probably cut down on his interceptions as well, but he played well against the Cowboys, and Dallas has a lot of questions to answer, especially going into this game against the Philadelphia Eagles. Both teams have a lot of questions to answer. The Eagles took a thumping to the Minnesota Vikings this past week in a game that, as a person who is a Bears fan, was really hoping that they would go in there and get the W. Now we have to go and make sure that we get a W. The Bears have to go and get a W when they play Philadelphia in a few weeks. But I really want to see Minnesota, the Philadelphia Eagles go into Minnesota and be able to get themselves on track. For that, but for this matchup too, and that's what was disappointing about the Cowboys losing their matchup is now you're watching for these 2 teams to be solving some of their issues rather than 2 teams functioning at their highest level, 2 division rivals at that, going at it for what could turn out to be a deciding matchup later on in the season. We won't be getting to see that. We're going to see the Dallas Cowboys banged up offense with that could be without Amari Cooper, that's having trouble stopping anybody against the Philadelphia Eagles defense that we know can't stop anybody passing wise, but is going to try their best to shut down the run, and is also banged up on offense a little bit with Deshaun Jackson, who might be coming back this week. We'll have to see about that. It'll still be a good game. It's just not. It's surprising where both teams are 3-3. The Cowboys have lost 3 straight, by the way. And the Eagles had that wild loss to the Falcons. It's a weird year. Again, I'm probably gonna say this a lot throughout the remainder of this segment. That's just the way it is. It's a weird year, and it's early, so a lot of these issues will be worked out by the time it really matters. But I'm sure neither team expected to be anywhere close to this point, especially how they started off in the Cowboys case, and then the Eagles coming into the season, how they thought probably things would be going for them. They got a lot of pressure on them to win, especially with them having traded or let Nick Foles walk. Now, granted, he was a free agent, and they still have Carson Wentz, but they got to prove that Wentz is the right choice. That's gonna be over their shoulders until Wentz wins a championship in Philadelphia. That's just one of those things that doesn't go away. Switching gears slightly here. The MVP conversation, is Deshaun Watson a part of it? I would say that he's definitely in the conversation, and we'll get to who my front runner is in a moment. But I think when you look at what he's doing with the Texans, we already know that offensive line, despite the addition of Laremy Tunsil, is still not great. They're probably not even good, but we're going to be polite this time and say that they're not great. But the Texans are still sitting at 4-2 at top of their division, and Deshaun Watson is really having himself quite the season. He's 6th in completion percentage, 11th in passing yards, 5th in touchdowns, 4th in total QBR, 5th in sacks taken, though, because again, that offensive line. But he's also got 5 rushing touchdowns. He's doing a little bit of everything for this team, and he got that win against the Kansas City Chiefs, despite an interception that was pass interference. But whatever, we know that's been quite garbage throughout this season. The officiating has been terrible. There have been too many flags, and the ones that when they call them, and then when they don't call them, they're egregious. So I'm not sure what's going on. They got to get that figured out. But I digress. Deshaun Watson definitely has the a strong resume to be in the conversation for MVP. I'm not sure if he's quite the front runner or even if he would even make my top 2 just now. And I might even stretch that to top 3. He's not in my top 2, maybe not in my top 3, but he's definitely in the conversation. And if they keep winning, I don't know how you can keep him out. We know Mahomes is probably the league-wide favorite, but personally, that's not who I'm resting mine on. I actually have a favorite right now and a dark horse in this one. Russell Wilson is my favorite, and then the dark horse is Lamar Jackson. And before anybody out there laughs when they think about Lamar Jackson as the MVP of the NFL, hear me out. So first up, Russ's argument. Second in completion percentage. He's 8th in yards, but he's tied for second in touchdowns. He's also got, with 14 passing, no interceptions, by the way. He's also got 3 rushing touchdowns. He's second in yards per attempt, first in air yards per attempt, second in total QBR, and he leads the league in fourth quarter comebacks already with 3. Now he's 6th in sacks taken with 16. He also doesn't have a very good offensive line, but he's incredibly efficient. I already told you he's second in the league in touchdowns and completion percentage, but his pass attempts are way down in like the 20s or something like that. Maybe not that far now, but what he's doing is that's a run first team. That's a run first and second and probably third, so like second and a half time, that's when they're going to run. When they call him Russ to pass, though, he's efficient with it. He gets the ball where he gets to be, and he scores touchdowns. Russ is my favorite right now for the MVP of the league. Seattle, like I said, will be taking on Baltimore Ravens in Seattle this week, but they're sitting pretty at 5-1. The only team ahead of them in their division is the 49ers, who we'll cover in a second. I think that Russ if he's not number 1, he has to be your number 2. But for me right now, he's above Patrick Mahomes. And whatever reasons Patrick Mahomes not performing up to his normal, what his expectations are, he's not. So, and Russ is and meeting and exceeding what his would be, aside from past attempts. But I can't argue with your attempts if you're incredibly efficient with it, which he is right now. And then my dark horse was Lamar Jackson. Now, before anyone laughs, Lamar is 8th in touchdowns, 12th in yards, passing yards, 15th in completion percentage at 64. That's not great, but it's far improved over what he was and what anybody probably had him pegged to be coming in. We've seen him grow so much as a passer this year. I don't think anybody should be that surprised, but the talk was there that he wasn't a great thrower because it was. But he's also got he's also 6th in total QBR. And here's the thing: I told you he was 12th in yards, just passing, and he's behind Deshaun Watson, who's 11th at 1644, right? Lamar's also got 460 yards on the ground, averaging 6.7 yards per carry, and he's got 2 touchdowns. That yardage total puts him above any of the other 2 guys that I just mentioned, and even over Patrick Mahomes as well. So, and the Baltimore Ravens are sitting alone on top of their division at 4-2. I'm not sure why Lamar's not getting any more talk than he is. But if I had any say, he would definitely be one of the people that people were talking about because Lamar is doing made some incredible strides as the passer, and he is the engine behind that new look Baltimore Ravens offense. Not staying because we had the AFC in that too, but moving around the NFC, you got the Saints and the Panthers, both rolling right now, and both are rolling with backup quarterbacks. The Panthers are rolling behind Kyle Allen, who's 4-0, completing 65% of his passes, 7.4 yards per attempt, 7 touchdowns, no picks, but he's got a 56.3 total QBR, and I'm going to come back to that QBR in 1 second. The Saints are rolling behind Teddy Bridgewater, who's also 4-0, completing 69% of his passes, 6.9 yards per attempt, 7 touchdowns. He's got 2 picks, and he's got a 40.3 total QBR. Now, it's important to note those QBRs because despite those somewhat impressive stats, what it's telling you is that these guys are really operating more as game managers, and they're doing so very well, but let's not be confused. And the reason why I bring that up is because there's been a lot of talk about both of these guys usurping the starters in their positions. Now, it's probably more likely for Kyle Allen than it is for Teddy Bridgewater to do so with Drew Brees down there in New Orleans. Cam Newton's been banged up for a while. The team is rolling behind him. They hadn't won in a while behind Cam, and there's a lot of storylines that are pushing for other things. But most important right now, they're winning, and they hadn't been winning previous to that. Now, do that if you want to, but I would argue that we've seen enough. Maybe not seen enough, but I think with the QBR on top of some of the other things that we've seen, that Kyle Allen is good right now, but there's probably going to be a time when their league has figured him out. Now, I could probably be wrong about that. That's quite possible and likely. That's just the world, the way the dice roll on it. But I'm not sure that a healthy Cam Newton is still not better than Kyle Allen. All due respect to Kyle Allen, I'm just not sure that he's better than a healthy Cam at this point. Now, if he goes out there, great. I don't want to see anybody not succeed. That's great. If he keeps the job, then so be it. But I think we rush and forget how great Cam was when he's right. Remember, he was having a great season last year before he hurt himself and then played too long on that injured shoulder. He was playing this preseason healthy until he stayed in too long in the preseason game and hurt his foot and then played on that hurt foot. We tend to throw those things away when trying to throw away certain players when talking about them in NFL discussions. Teddy Bridgewater's case is a little bit different. He's a high pick, so we shouldn't be surprised at his success. Maybe not even at his game manager status, because that's kind of what he was before his gruesome knee injury with the Minnesota Vikings. I think what is surprising, though, is that he's gone. The Saints the defense has come around to help step up their game in light of the situation with Drew Brees no longer being there, and has pretty much not carry this team, but make sure that they're doing, like I said, they're carrying their part, doing what they're supposed to do and keeping things locked up. That's important for this team as they come into Chicago to face the Bears, who are coming off their bye week and in desperate need of a victory after how things have gone recently. They just put Akeem Hicks on IR. Mitch Trubisky is expected to come back. We'll see if he does. First report comes out later on today. Bilal Nichols should come back to somewhat help out with the loss of Akeem Hicks. You still got Nick Williams, who had that nice show a couple of weeks ago. But the Bears need to figure out the offense more than anything. And a little interjection here before we move on to the next topic. I would like to see the Bears incorporate some more play action into what they're trying to get accomplished. They're one of the fewest percentage teams in terms of how many of their play calls are play action passes. When they've done it so far this year, it hasn't been great. But Mitch Trubisky has thrived in that, and there's an article coming out soon for Last Word on Pro Football where I'll be breaking down what happened or asking the question what happened with his numbers and how they've fallen. And it seems to be more a matter of the play calling. As the rushing attempts fell, so did their reliance upon the play action passing game. And maybe now with the offensive line issues, that's an issue, but we'll see. Kyle Long also went on IR. I have to throw in there, and he'll be replaced by Rashawn Howard, it's believed at first. But Alex Bars has also been called up with the Akeem Hicks move. Hicks does possibly returning by week 15. But they have to figure out a way to get the offense going. And one of the things they can do, which I wrote in my last with the breakdown for the bye week, is that they need to stop being so predictable with their usage of their two running backs. When Cohen and Howard or in Montgomery are on the floor, on the field together, when Cohen and Montgomery are on the field, finally, they can't be so predictable with who's getting the ball and what kind of situation. Get them on the field together, or stick to Montgomery and sprinkle in Cohen on the field as an addition to, or as a scat back and still give him his carries. But I think what it is that when you see Tariq Cohen come on the field, teams are assuming it's a pass, and they'll guess late or they'll make up for it if it's a run. And when it's Montgomery, it's vice versa. They'll guess that it's going to be the run. And then, if he's getting a handoff, especially, that's why with Montgomery, most importantly, they need to start incorporating more play action passes, because if teams are going to sell out to stop him on the run, then you have to make them pay. Now, Mitch has to hit those passes, which is what I'm saying with the numbers not being great. But I think that's a good way to get some of those defenders sucked up out of the mid area, where I think that they're sitting right now, because a lot of the side to side in this West Coast style offense is right in that area. Bring them in with some play action. And then once you start hitting those, you'll be able to get some of those deep passes because the guys on the outside will have more one-on-ones more consistently. That's just one of the things that I want to see from the Chicago Bears. Hopefully they start that with this game, especially with the defense getting banged up right now with Akeem Hicks out. Control this clock, control this game, get this offense back on track. I have all the faith in the world that you can do it, but got to see it before it's a real thing and not just talk. Before we wrap up the NFL portion of this, we got to talk about, of course, the 2 undefeated teams. And I'm going to talk about the Patriots, but I really want to talk about the 49ers and what they've got going on. Both teams, again, undefeated. The 49ers, though, are second in rushing attempts, third in rushing yards, while they're 25th in passing yards. And that's the big thing, is they're not really doing much in the air. Jimmy Garoppolo's not killing it. He's got just over 1,100 yards. He's completing nearly 70% of his passes, though, 69.9. 7 touchdowns and 5 picks, 54 total QBR. Again, he's back with that Bridgewater and Kyle Allen kind of thing where he's more managing the game than anything, but it's been effective in their winning games, obviously, so that's all that really matters. They have 3 players with 100-plus rushing yards. They are second in total yards and points allowed per game. New England is first. They are 6th in rushing yards allowed per game. In rushing yards allowed, New England is third. And they are first in pass yards allowed per game. New England is second. And the Niners are second in sacks per game. New England is third. Both of these teams are doing this off of defense right now. And what we're seeing is the power run game also, in San Francisco's case, making it come back against some of these smallish defenses, these nickel defenses. You want to go with a 220-pound linebacker? Then I'm going to bring in 3 running backs and just drive the ball, pound the ball right down your throat repeatedly until you stop me. And my quarterback's going to do what I need him to do when I need him to do it and not do too much otherwise. The Patriots just do what the Patriots do. This is not surprising to me at all. They find ways to do it different ways every single time, so none of that's shocking. I'm just waiting for you. If you want to see them fall off, wait till everybody's gone. Because even if one of them were to leave, Bill Belichick or Tom Brady, I think they would still roll at least for another season or so. We probably will never find out. They'll probably go together when they do finally call it a scene. But the Niners, man, really impressed with what they're doing. Now, neither team's schedule has been that tough. So we'll see what happens when they get deeper into the teeth of it. But you can only play who's on your schedule. And right now, both teams have beaten everybody on their schedule. And that's the most important thing right now. We'll see what's going forward, who can keep it up. I'm not sure if I expect either one to lose immediately. I definitely don't see the Patriots taking a loss this week. They're taking on the Jets. Even though it's on the road and it's a divisional game, I don't think the Patriots lose that game. Call me crazy. Maybe it's just a hunch that I have. And then the Reds, I don't see the Niners losing to the Redskins. Now, that could be an upset because this is a young upstart team, and this is a West Coast team traveling to the East for a noon start. So it's going to be really 10 o'clock in their time. The Redskins 1-5 against the 5-0 team. This has upset special written on it. I might actually, if the Redskins are more subtle, I would probably take them, but they're so indecisive on what they want to even do with their quarterback position and the rest of that team. Talking crazy, great culture and stuff like that, whatever. That I just don't see them lose. So we'll probably have two undefeated teams still going into week 8. That's going to do it for this segment. Take a quick break. When I come back, though, we're going to address some of the stuff that's going on in the NBA. And, not some exciting, some stuff to look forward to, but some other stuff to wonder about, too. Welcome back to Triple Zeros, man. Time to switch gears from NFL. Going to talk a little bit of NBA preseason. Now, we're not going to talk about what happened in this preseason because we're at the end of it and nothing really matters at this point except for health. We'll talk about that in a second, too. The most important thing that's going on is that we are now less than a week away from the start of the NBA regular season. And with that in mind, I want to make a couple of conference standings predictions where I think some teams are going to rank. Now, if you've been following along, I've already given out who I think is going to be facing each other in the finals. In case you haven't caught it, here's a reminder. I have the Philadelphia 76ers coming out of the East and health permitting, which we'll cover in a second. The Los Angeles Lakers coming out of the West. Now, that's on film again, just so we're clear. But my standings for the regular season are a little bit different from that. We'll start off in the East just because I think that's a little bit more up for grabs than the West. Because in the West, I think it's going to come down to two teams when it's all said and done, because we'll talk about why. But in the East, I have Philadelphia as the number 1 seed, which I could see them not getting. They're not as deep as some of the other teams, so they could be lose some games due to rest more than some of the other squads might. Milwaukee coming in at 2. I don't think that they got any better. I think they got worse, but I don't think any of the other teams in the conference got better enough to challenge them for one of those top 2 spots. They could still get one if the Sixers are, like I said, worried about health more than they are about playoff seeding. Third, I have the Indiana Pacers. That's contingent upon Victor Oladipo's health, but that's a strong backcourt. TJ Warren on the wing. You got the 2 big Sabonis and Miles Turner, who I like a lot. That team can be tough for teams to fight. They still got Jeremy Lamb coming off the bench as well. That's going to be a strong backcourt. They're going to lock up a lot of guards, and then those bigs, those 2 towers. We see Detroit have something similar. We'll get to them in a moment. Not as the Pacers aren't as versatile as the Detroit bigs are, mainly Blake Griffin, but it's still a similar thought process with 2 conventional bigs, 2 more conventional bigs, even though both of the Pacers guys are probably more centers, whatever. Two trees out there, along with some very dangerous weapons in Oladipo and Brogdon, and again, TJ Warren out there as a spot-up guy. Fourth, I have the Boston Celtics, which is one that I think could be as high as 4. I don't know if they go any higher than 4, but I think they could also be like one of the bottom 2 or 3 teams. I think they make the playoffs because of Brad Stevens' coaching ability, and this roster still has Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum, but they lost Al Horford. They got Enes Kanter back. There was not going to be anything close to what Al Horford brought to the team. You went from Kyrie Irving to Kemba Walker. I love me some Kemba. And I love Marcus Smart. I'm just not sure that backcourt is going to be enough to do anything significant for you in the playoffs. Again, any of these predictions, I'm more than willing to be proven wrong and have no issues with it. But this is just how I feel about that. I feel like that ceiling has been lowered enough to where they could be 4th and possibly lower due to just not having the same amount of talent. But again, the Brad Stevens factor, he seems to thrive with quote unquote lesser talents, and the ego is definitely not the same. So we'll see how that ends up going for them, but I have them at 4th right now. So I might sound like I'm completely dissing them. Having them at 4th probably should show that it's not quite all it sounded to be. I have Brooklyn at the 5th spot. They have Kyrie this year. They still got Spencer Dinwiddie. They still have Caris LeVert. Jared Allen's down low. They got Taurean Prince now. I think they can make it the playoffs. Maybe I have them a little bit high at 5, especially with a lot of these pieces, with Kyrie being the major one still there, and they're missing their other big dog, their biggest dog, Kevin Durant. He won't play this year. This is really a team that's going forward, is one to look for, but I still think that this is enough for them to get into the playoffs, and they're still a talented group. So I can see them getting to the 5 spot. Number 6, I had Miami. I think they were with Jimmy there, he's going to push that team, and he's going to bring them to new heights. And we know how that system, that culture down there already brings the best out of players. Look at James Johnson. That's my favorite example. Early Deion Waiters when he first got down there. I think Jimmy reinforces that culture, especially with Wade out now. And I think it's a team that can, off the sheer will of working harder than you and being in better shape than you, I think they make that to the 7th seed or to the 6th seed. 7, I have Detroit. They got Derrick Rose. I was talking on What the Steve, if you check that out, I was telling him that it hurts to see Derrick Rose play for all these other central teams. Hopefully one day, or Eastern Conference teams, right in our division. Hopefully one day he comes back home and to end it up to finalize his career. But just seeing him play there, wish him nothing but the best. This is a team, another one of those that I think I can see going here, or I can see them being out together. They can even be higher than this. It really depends on where they get their outside shooting from consistently. there were talks of possibly them moving Andre Drummond to the Golden State Warriors for D'Angelo Russell. It'd be interesting to see what that does to Reggie Jackson and Derrick Rose. But I think that deal actually works better for Golden State than it does for Detroit. Even though Detroit gets a good player in D'Angelo Russell, I'm not sure where that puts them on the rebuild because then they're overloaded with guards, and then they still got Blake. So that's my 7th, and then my 8th seed is the Chicago Bulls, who people are going to give me flack for this pick and call me a homer, but so be it. I think that this team, when healthy, can challenge for one of those 8th seed, one of those lower seeds. I could see them being up to 7. I said 6. That's probably a little optimistic, but I definitely could see them being a 7th or 8th seed in the Eastern Conference, especially. I don't think Orlando got any better. And I think a lot of the Bulls' struggles were due to the turmoil that was going on throughout the year and then the injuries that they were dealing with also throughout the entire season. So when healthy, I think this team challenges. I think Zach LaVine makes an all-star team. Hopefully we see a better Lauri Markkanen than we've seen from this preseason. Kobe White could be a challenger for a Rookie of the Year. We'll talk about that in a moment. But that's my AC. That's my 1 through 8. Philly, Milwaukee, Indy, Boston, Brooklyn, Miami, Detroit, Chicago in the East. Shifting gears to the West, I got Denver at the number 1 seed. They're just a deep team. Love the addition of Jeremy Grant. I think Jamal Murray might take another step forward. If he can find consistency to that streaky scoring that he's found, then he could be one of the most dangerous scorers in the NBA. Utah, another team that I like top to bottom. Like their front line better than their backups, but they are a team that's going to play good defense and they're going to be smart with the basketball. That's going to be something to watch out for. Of course, Rudy Gobert is always a challenger for the Defensive Player of the Year award. At 3, I have Portland. I think Portland's going to be a better team. We'll see if they keep Hassan Whiteside. If they end up making a move for Kevin Love, which I think would be a great move for them with next to Nurkic especially. They could use that outside shooting from a big somebody other than CJ and Dame, and they're not getting it from the wing. They still need a wing to help out, but who maybe not as little as that guy. At 4, I have the Lakers. This is contingent on health, and I actually am struggling with where to put the Lakers and the Clippers and a team like Portland, where I could see the Lakers and the Clippers having to rest their guys because they don't have they load management. These are the two, LeBron and Kawhi, the two poster children for load management. Then you throw in the injury-prone supporting guys like Anthony Davis and Paul George, and it's like, well, I can see this team's not being anywhere close to the top 2 seeds, but still making the playoffs. So 4 and 5, I know that'll put them at a first-round clash, which nobody wants to see. So I hope that I'm wrong about that, but that's where it just about shakes out now. Then you got Houston at 6. Hopefully we see one of those 2 Laker teams fall to 6. We'll say that. And then you got Houston there. I like that be my dark horse team to make it out of the West would be Houston, just because I like Russ. Russ is my favorite player in the NBA right now. And James Harden's one of the best scorers ever. No matter how he gets it done, he gets it done. That's all that's important. And I think this team could shock a lot of people because people are sleeping on what they can do. It's basically the same team, but now with a higher impact player. In my opinion, you could disagree if you want to, in Russell Westbrook over Chris Paul. That's an improvement to me. Rounding out the bottom, San Antonio Spurs. At some point, they have to not make the playoffs, right? I would imagine at some point, even if Greg Popovich is still there for forever, they have to not make the playoffs. But it won't be this year. I think they still make it this year. And then my last spot, I know I'm moving on quickly, but that's because I don't know why, but I think that they make the playoffs. They always do. That's just what they do. DeRozan and the Marcus Aldridge are just playing well. They play that Spurs style of ball, smart, within control, and they don't beat themselves. And they make you beat you. I think they make it to the playoffs and then round it out with the Sacramento. I think the younger teams I have to watch in either conference will be the Atlanta Hawks and in the East, and then the Pelicans in the West. I said that on with the Steelers. Those are two teams that I'll be paying attention to this season to see how they progress. But that's my conference. You got Denver, Utah, Portland, some amalgamation of Houston, the Clippers, and the Lakers. Then you got Sacramento, or you got San Antonio, Sacramento, and then who did I miss? Portland. All right, I threw them in there. Yeah. So you got Denver, Utah, Portland, some amalgamation of Houston, the Clippers, and the Lakers, Sacramento at the bottom, and the Spurs. That's my Western Conference predictions. Moving on from the conference predictions, we're going to do some early awards predictions. This is always tricky because it's preseason and who knows what can change. Obviously, health is a big factor. MVP. Now, this one is tricky, but I could see, and maybe not with some of the recent things, which we'll talk about in a second, that have been happening, but I can see this being an MVP Bron type of season. We dealt with injury last year, disappointment with the season, a lot of speculation, a lot of talk, a lot of negativity thrown at him about his game and stuff. I can see this being a year with the pieces around him where Bron just looks like Bron again, controlling the flow of things, dishing to teammates that are out here, finishing off these great passes, these would-be assists, making them actual assists, and I think we could see another Bron. He had a great year last 27, 7 and 7, something like that last year. I think that'll be the MVP early. Again, health permitting. Defensive player of the year, I'm going to go with Kawhi. I'm going to think Kawhi. Let's say he doesn't need the low match, which he will, so he probably won't go. And my fallback would be Rudy because Rudy just locks down the paint. But I would love to see Kawhi get Defensive Player of the Year award. Just to show, I would love to see him bounce back healthy. So that may be the driving factor behind this decision, is that if he got it, that meant he played enough to qualify and had that significant of an impact to win it. I think that would be great to see. Now, Rookie of the Year, my pick is Zion, the easiest pick ever. You know this is going to be a media force-fed pick here. But my dark horse is Michael Porter Jr. continuing the trend of gap year players having success in that rookie season, a la Ben Simmons. If healthy, okay, it's going to be tough too because that team is deep and they have a lot of threats. But MPJ, if he's all he's cracked up to be, would be awesome. I think I would have loved to see him in C-Rep, but that's neither here nor there. That's my dark horse pick for Rookie of the Year. Most improved player, and we're not going to worry about Coach of the Year because whatever, we're worried about these players right now. Most improved player, Ben Simmons. And this is based solely off of him hitting that three ball. If he can hit threes at a semi-regular basis, we're talking about a guy who's now a threat no matter what's going on the floor. He's already, I'm not going to put a top anything number on him, but he's already one of the best players in the NBA. And you give him a consistent three ball, and now we're really talking MVP status. I'm going to say he falls just short of that, or maybe it's just because, again, my pick as LeBron has just that much better of a season. But Ben Simmons could be challenging, and this was brought up on What the Steve as well. He actually mentioned this. Ben Simmons could be challenging for an MVP nomination this year as well. That wouldn't be the most surprising thing. And then sixth man, I'm going straight chalk. I think Lou Williams has another great season. I think that with the team that's around him now, with Kawhi and Paul George, with how much they're going to need the rest, and with how thin that team is otherwise, the scoring's got to come from somewhere. I think he's going to do a lot of the heavy lifting, and I think that's going to boost him to another six-man title, which he deserves. He's one of the better six men of all time. That would be my choice if I had to force a pick right now. So recapping, MVPs, LeBron, Defensive Player of the Year, if I had my way, would be Kawhi. Now I could also see it being Giannis. That would be cool too. So my fallback for, if not Kawhi, then Giannis. I get Rudy is one I said could do, and I said that would be my fallback, but I'm going to change that and go over to Giannis because you could have given it to Giannis last year, if we're going to be honest. Rookie of the Year is Zion, the obvious pick. Non-chalk though, Michael Porter Jr. for that gap year. Most improved, Ben Simmons. And then sixth man of the year, another one for Lou Will. Now, we're talking about injuries, health permitting a lot. The Lakers are already dealing with some injuries early on. Anthony Davis has a sprained thumb. Kyle Kuzma's out indefinitely with an injury. There's a week left of the season, and it's a long season, but a slow start in the West could, again, put them down, like I was saying, in about the 4, 5, 6 area, with them focused more on health long term than trying to get a top seed. I don't think they really care, especially with a guy with LeBron on the team. Make the playoffs, because once the playoffs start, anything can happen. And with the experience between him, what he has done, I don't think he's really worried about playoff seeding as much as a younger team trying to find its way still would be. Anthony Davis is one, though, is a little bit trickier because it's kind of been this for forever with him. And that's kind of where things are. What the knock on him is that it's always a nagging injury that keeps him out, causes him to miss some sort of time. And if that's going to be the case, then the Lakers are going to struggle. And if it was a scare that he could be out for up to 8 weeks. Turned out to not be the case. His MRI came back clean, but that's just part of the deal when you have an Anthony Davis. And a lot of times deals like the one for him end up crippling franchises because that player turns out to be, to borrow a phrase from Denny Green, exactly who we thought they were. They are who we thought they were. If Anthony Davis proves to continue to be injury prone and miss time, it could be dangerous for the chances of this team and how long he's around in LA. Remember, I think he can opt into free agency this year, if not this year, next year. But he's still a possible flight risk. So that's going to be something to keep an eye on going forward. Now we're going to wrap up this episode of Triple Zeros. And if you want to follow me, please follow me, man. I am at Josh G Buck on Twitter. If you want to hit me up on Facebook / at Jukes and Jumps, Gmail, Jukes and Jumps at gmail.com. But the best way to hit me up is at Josh G Buck on the Twitters. And my follow me, Last Word on Pro Football, and Pippin Ain't Easy for my Bulls talk. But like I said, we're going to wrap up this episode of Triple Zeros with this segment here, talking about LeBron. And he weighed in on the Daryl Morey tweet supporting Hong Kong, and now with all the NBA controversy going on about it. First of all, let's let you hear what LeBron's initial comments about Daryl Morey and what LeBron felt the real issue at hand was, or here are LeBron's comments about Daryl Morey's situation.
Speech, yes, we all do have freedom of speech, but at times there are ramifications for the negative that can happen when you're not thinking about others and you're only thinking about yourself. So I don't believe, I don't want to get into a word or sentence feud with Daryl Morey, but I believe he wasn't educated on the situation at hand, and he spoke.
That's an issue. I have an issue with that statement. And we'll talk about that in a second. Now, that statement right there was off-putting because he said he was selfish. Daryl Morey's tweet was in support of protesters in Hong Kong. So the tweet came out in support of others. How can it be selfish? Number two, he said that he was uneducated. He thinks that's what happened. So you're telling me that you're unsure. You think, though, that somebody spoke on a situation that they were uneducated about. So what you're saying is you were uneducated about on you are not fully educated on whether or not he was educated, but yet here you are speaking. Now I get it, you're answering a question, but understand that the wording of your answer is going to be construed a certain type of way. So this is what I'm doing. I'm just trying to break down what the message, the subtext that's going to be broken down and has been taken away from this is. And then you said, and then he spoke and said that people do things without thinking about the ramifications on others. Again, the tweet was inspired by from protesters in China, in Hong Kong. And to say that he was only thinking about himself and that he was miseducated or undereducated, and that he spoke while starting off with, yes, we all have freedom of speech, but there can be no but. And I think that's the part that was lost in that maybe that's not, and I'm sure that's not, I'm sure if he had a chance to say it again, he would probably word it differently, not necessarily change the message, but word it differently. Maybe not. He tried to add this to it to quote unquote help the situation. He says, my team in this league just went through a difficult week. I think people need to understand that what a tweet or a statement can do to others, and I believe nobody stopped and considered what would happen. Could have waited a week to send it. Now, that tweet is so problematic. First of all, he says he and his team and this league just went through a difficult week. Meanwhile, there are protests with people actually like battling with police officers and smoke bombs and this and that and the other going on. Okay. I think people need to understand what a tweet or statement can do to others. That's why you tweet out in support of your causes. So again, not sure where he's trying to go with this. He believes nobody stopped to consider what would happen. How? So that's what you believe. Again, you spoke on how somebody was undereducated on the situation, but now you're speaking on their thought process and what led up to them saying it without. There's no way you could have full education on what happened because it just doesn't feel as though that's not something that was discussed beforehand, right? This is not something he called him up and said, "Hey, you know what? I'm thinking about tweeting this out. What do you think?" This is something that he tweeted, and now you're trying to dive into what he said. Again, this is just breaking down these statements. This is not going into the psychology behind them or what he's actually thinking. This is just going by what the words that are being put out. And then that final part, could have waited a week to send it. Now, that's the most problematic of all, in my opinion, because if that had been said about any social justice issue that he takes up and ones that I clearly am in full support of, I would be heated. If anybody said it to anything I ever supported, I'd be heated. And he would be heated. And I would expect him to be heated to say it could have waited a week for what you think is a social is an effort to enact change, an effort to inspire, an effort to support those that you think are doing the right thing. Saying it can wait a week is the most disrespectful thing in the world. And I feel like that's a quote that's going to haunt him for a long time. Now, he sent another tweet. He said, "Let me clear up the confusion. I do not believe there was any consideration for the consequences or ramifications of the tweet. I'm not discussing the substance. Others can talk about that." Now, what it sounds like there is that he might agree with Daryl Morey, but he doesn't think that he still thinks it was a bad idea because of what's going on with China and not fully getting it. I think that the real question might need to be, if it's such a precarious situation for our players to be there with a tweet like that, with someone expressing their freedom of speech in America, then maybe we don't need to have that partnership in the first place. Now, I totally get the NBA stance. That's their second largest partner for revenue. And we all know money rules the world and business makes the world go round and all those type of things, those cliches. But the part that might be most bothersome is that there seems to be I don't want to say bowing. I don't want to call it that. It's more of an acquiescing to the business side rather than the human side. And I'm going to tell you why I understand. But I get them trying to steer, the NBA guys trying to steer away from this one. But no, it doesn't look good. It looks bad. And why I say I get it. LeBron actually came out and said, I don't believe that every cause should be for everybody. He says that he spoke from a standpoint. He likes to speak from a standpoint of knowledge. He doesn't feel like he's knowledgeable about the situation. And that was another thing I had an issue with because the Morey tweet came out over about a week or so ago. It's not a secret situation. We all know what's going on. It's in the news. And this has been the biggest non-basketball related NBA story in quite some time. And it's definitely the largest one going on in the news cycle right now. So to claim ignorance on what's going on, I felt was a little bit disingenuous. Whatever, you could say that. Now, you might say, well, what would you have said then? How could he have approached it any better? There's the no comment. I don't necessarily think that would have worked. I think if he'd have said no comment, people would have still attacked him because they'd be like, oh, he doesn't want to stand up to China, blah, 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 blah. I don't think that's it at all. First of all, let me say this. There's nobody in this country. Well, there's next to nobody in this country that can claim impunity from dealing with China. We get a large amount of our goods from China, text, all types of things, food, all types of stuff, whatever. So to try to down LeBron for sticking to his business side with this person, with this entity, this nation, I think is disingenuous on the people's side, on those people judging side, because again, China's in our daily lives. It's in the American culture, but also the NBA to a more specific point. So you can't separate, and that's part of the problem that's going on right now. Is he's being separated from the rest of this going on with the NBA, and they're kind of being able to just sit in the background and let it happen. I feel like he got trapped into it. You know, they were waiting for him to speak up. I heard a lot of it over the previous weekend. You know, he's always got so much to say about social issues. Why doesn't he speak on this one? Now, my response, no one asked, unsolicited, but if I was to be asked, what would you say if you were in LeBron's shoes? What should he have said? I would have said, you know, I'm slowly becoming apprised of what's going on with China and Hong Kong. They have to handle their own situations, just like we have to handle our own situations. If this is a cause that Daryl Morey wants to get behind, then Daryl Morey can do what Daryl Morey wants to do. As for me, I'll continue to focus on the issues that I'm focusing on. And I just wish that we would focus on, if you wanted to really throw one in there, you could also add in, you know, I just wish that we would focus this much on domestic issues as we do on international ones. But the claim of ignorance, the throwing Daryl Morey under the bus, the non-answer, all come together to make him look bad in light of all of his other social activism, which is now being tarnished because the image of him is, oh, he stood with communist China over people in Hong Kong who were recorded singing the national anthem. They're using tweets that he's tweeted out from MLK. You know, an injustice anywhere is an injustice is a threat to justice everywhere. You can't be silent and all these types of things. And again, it's not that not that I necessarily think that he was siding with China. I think the NBA as a whole is trying to sidestep all this and not be held accountable for America's misdoings or for America's dealings with another, I guess what one might consider another nation. But what we're seeing is that, like I said, LeBron's being made the face of this, just as he is the face of the league. Morey's been not silent because he's issued statements as well. But LeBron is not looking good in this, because even when he's speaking, his non-answer answers are really painting a picture of him choosing money over what many in the nation. This is like, not to get too political in this, but this is one of the few things that both sides of the political spectrum in America are agreeing upon right now, is that China's doing wrong, whatever. And for the NBA to be one that's picking the other side is kind of like a bizarre thing. And it's, you know, some of the talk recently has been, over the past few years, is the NBA trying to, is catching up to the NFL in terms of being king. And you could have made the argument recently, but now you kind of have to question it with some of these decisions. We talked about, you know, they were really loving the progressive label after what happened with the NFL and Colin Kaepernick. So now they got to deal with this, and it's just like, well, damn, you know, you thought you had that shadow off of you. Now, mind you, this is the same league that banned Chris Jackson, Mahmoud Abdul-Rauf. So let's not act like they're innocent in all this. But they had done a lot since then to try to change that image and work with players. They got rid of Donald Sterling and all those type of things. And they encouraged their players to stand up for their rights. But clearly there's a limit to how far that goes. It's not a good look for anybody. Right now, LeBron's in the front. And if I was a person around LeBron, I would have told him a long time ago what was going on. Because, again, this is the biggest story in the NBA that's not basketball related. And might even be bigger than anything basketball related, to be honest with you, right now. I would have made sure he knew what the situation was, and we would have been at that point expecting them to ask him. And I would have told him, look, you got to approach it this way. You got to answer it, but you can also tell them why you're not getting involved by saying we need to focus on here, because people also agree with that sentiment as well. So this is not, I know it might have started off sounding like I was going to bash him for it, but this is really a moment to just sit back and say, hold on, before everybody kills him, while it looks horrible for him, but he definitely did not say the right things. And I think he was wrong and flat out in what he said. I also don't think that he's a bad guy, and I don't think that it should undo all the good stuff that he's done here. don't get caught up in that game. Please don't. But the bigger point here is that if you're mad at him, you're really mad at yourself and you're mad at the country as a whole, because again, we all deal with this with China in this way. And as I said, Daryl Morey, if that's what he chooses to spend his energy on, then so be it. More power to him. That's just the case. That's just what it is. All LeBron had to say, again, one last time, I'm becoming aware of the situation. They have to handle theirs just like we have to handle our business. If that's what Daryl wants to do, then so be it. I wish that just to throw, again, me being me would have probably tried to throw in the snide with Mark, but I would at the end, I wish we would focus as much on domestic issues as we do on the international ones. Just a little simple. Not to get on too much, not to beat a dead horse on it. Like I said, I don't think that this is I don't think the NBA is necessarily bad, because I think we're all complicit with it. So you can't single any entity out just because they're the ones with their feet to the fire right now. And I think that's what's happening. We're using them as the scapegoat for all of our quote unquote sins here. But what's worse is that they're allowing the focus to be on LeBron when the only thing LeBron did was answer a question improperly. That's all. And like I said, knowing who he was, somebody around him should have probably been like, hey, just so you know, you're going to get this question. This is how you handle it. That's going to do it for this episode of 000. Guys, I want to thank you for tuning in. Catch us next time. Next episode will be on Saturday. Drop it sometime Saturday. If you want to check me out, please check me out. Follow me on Last Word on Pro. Check me out Last Word on Pro Football. Read me at Pippin Ain't Easy. And jukesjumpers.wordpress.com is website. The podcast will be there. You can also find it on Spotify. Obviously, you can watch the video on YouTube. We're on Pocket Cast. We're on Google Podcasts. Check it out. We're on Anchor. Hit me up on Twitter at JoshyBuck. Send the emails, jukesandjumps@gmail.com. Until next time, everybody, please be easy. Watch out for the crazies out there. I'm gone.